Even though the weather's getting warmer, it's still a season for soups and stews. I think they can be enjoyed year round. And in this video, I have 4 of those to share with you. These are so delicious, so many great flavors with great vegetables, some new items I'm trying out, and I'm using them in a variety of ways, whether I'm doing my soup or stew in a crock pot or in the quick cooker or just in my normal soup pot. Either way, these are gonna be loved by all. So let's get into it, and I'm gonna share with you the first stew. So this is the recipe we're going to be making today. It's Mexican pork stew with salsa verde. It's making our own salsa verde from tomatillos, so we're going to be making it from scratch. Never done that before. This recipe card came with our rock crock, our Dutch oven rock crock, and we are going to make it just as the recipe says, so you can see the rock crock in action. So these are my fresh tomatillos. I've never worked with these before, but I looked it up online and I learned how you prep them. And they come with these husks, these dry peel that you just pull right off, and then you end up with what looks like a little green tomato, and it's sticky. So there's a sticky surface on that green part. So once you peel the husk off of these, then we're gonna wash that stickiness off of here. So I got about 1 pound of tomatillos. So we're just gonna take all these shells, these husks off of them. This recipe calls for 2 pork tenderloins, about 1 pound each, and cut them into 1-inch pieces. So I've done that already, and now I'm adding half of the pork to my Pampered Chef rock crock Dutch oven with about 1 tablespoon of oil over medium-high heat. And I'll have to do the pork in 2 batches because there's so much, but I'll do it with the first batch, and I've seasoned all the pork with 2 teaspoons of cumin and a teaspoon of salt. Once my pork is browned, which takes about 2 to 3 minutes on each side, and I'll do the other batch and I'll set all the pork aside. While my pork was cooking, I've diced my tomatillos. Now I've diced 10, but the recipe only calls for 6, so just do 6. Walmart just has you order them by the pound, so that's why I had more. Now to my Dutch oven, I'll add another half tablespoon of oil, and I'll cook all my tomatillos along with 1 large onion that I've thinly sliced, and 6 garlic cloves that I'm pressing in my Pampered Chef garlic press. I just love this thing. I also have a fresh jalapeno, and I'm just gonna dice half of it so it's not as spicy, but you could do the whole jalapeno, and I'll add 2 more teaspoons of cumin to everything. I'm gonna let it saute for about 3 to 4 minutes until the veggies get nice and softened. Next, I sprinkle the vegetables with about 1/2 cup of flour, and I cook this in for about a minute. Then I slowly add 1 cup of chicken stock, stirring constantly as it thickens. I'll stir in the remaining 2 cups of stock, so it's 3 cups total. To this, we're gonna add a can of fire roasted diced tomatoes. You could also use, the recipe does call for grape tomatoes, but I needed the grape tomatoes I have for another recipe. I thought they would go really good in this, the fire roasted. So I think it's gonna be fine. Might be a little saucier, but it's good. This recipe also calls for 2 tablespoons of brown sugar, but I'm just going to use about 1 teaspoon just to keep the sugar content low. Now here is where the Pampered Chef rock crock Dutch oven is amazing. I'm going to take this pot from the stove to the microwave. Now if you don't have this pot, I'll leave a link to it in the description box, as I have a link to a store as a Pampered Chef consultant, and this pot will be on there for you to check out. This pot is amazing. You can also just leave your pot on the stove if you don't have this one and let it simmer for about 45 minutes to an hour until everything is fully cooked and softened. All right, put our pot into the microwave. Let's cook that for 10 minutes to start. Help if I hit start and not stop, and go. Okay, out of the microwave after 10 minutes, we're now going to add in our remaining ingredients. We have some corn here. I'm gonna add that. It's canned corn. You can also use frozen corn. And our cooked pork. I'll also add 1 cup of chopped cilantro, and then I'm gonna stir all that together and then put it back into the microwave for another 2 to 3 minutes. Or you can continue on your stove in your pot until the corn is hot, all mixed in with the stew. Our stew is done and it's ready to serve. I'm gonna serve it out individually in bowls and I'm gonna put fresh avocado pieces on top. And let me tell you, the colors are so vibrant. This was absolutely delicious, and the fresh tomatillos broke down to make a nice salsa verde, and it brought such a brightness, like a citrusy punch to the whole dish. It was so flavorful. And that microwave, this perfect pot, made it so much easier and quicker. But this is definitely a family favorite. I'll be making this one again. This next soup I'm making is a Thai curry noodle soup, and it is going to be for our soup group. Our soup group is 4 of us ladies who get together and share our favorite soups with each other. And we start the year with 4 months of soups. The middle of the year we do salads, and at the end of the year we do appetizers. So we're still in our soup season, so I'm whipping up this soup tonight, and I am the hostess this evening. So let's get started with the soup of the evening. All right, we have 1 tablespoon of olive oil heated over medium-high heat. I'm gonna add my garlic. This is minced garlic. About 4 cloves, minced garlic. And then I'm gonna add my bell pepper. This is 2 red bell peppers. And I'm also gonna add, this is 1 medium onion and 1 large shallot. So this is diced onion and shallot. Get everything coated in that oil. We're gonna let this sweat down and soften up. Now the recipe only calls for a white onion, but I had that shallot left over and I thought it was gonna add some really great flavor to this, so I needed to use it out. So it's gonna be great flavor added. But if you don't have the shallot, that's fine. Just onions will be fine. Okay, now that our vegetables have softened, we're gonna add curry paste. This is red curry paste, and it calls for 3 tablespoons, but we are doubling the recipe, so we're gonna do 6 tablespoons. I have 1 more jar. 5 and 6. I have this other brand, which has more of a kick, so it's gonna balance it out with the other. So let's get that all stirred in there. I'm gonna add 2 tablespoons of fresh ginger that I've had in the freezer, and I scrape the skin with a spoon and then I zest it with my little zester. It's easier to do this when it's been in the freezer. It keeps for the longest time as well. Normally I use ginger paste, but I wanted a lot of flavor in this soup, so fresh garlic and fresh ginger is key. Next I'm adding a carton of pho broth, and yes, it's pronounced pho, even though it looks like faux. But this broth I found at Aldi, and I wish I got more because it's so flavorful. It has onion and ginger and fish sauce and Asian spices, so it's gonna add a lot more depth of flavor. Now this box is only 4 cups and I need 12 cups total, so the remaining 8 will be chicken broth. The other thing we're gonna add liquid-wise to this is a can of coconut milk. We're gonna do the whole can. I'm going to whisk that milk until it's smooth into the broth with no more big chunks, and I'm going to add my chicken. Now this is boneless chicken breasts. I cut these into small pieces and I cooked them in a skillet. I did this yesterday until they were all browned. Now you can save a step with cooked rotisserie chicken. That would also work well. I also think chicken thighs would work really well in this. Now that this has come up to a boil, and for this large amount, it took about 20 to 25 minutes. So I'm gonna add 2 tablespoons of fish sauce and 4 teaspoons of brown sugar. Now I'm gonna add my noodles. These are brown rice pho noodles. I also got them from Aldi, but you can use any type of thin or rice noodle. And in this package, they come with 4 bundles, 1 cup each. So I'm gonna add 5 of those total to my soup. So that's 5 cups of noodles to about 12 cups of broth. And I'm gonna stir in all my fresh herbs. I have fresh basil. I found Thai basil in my store. I decided to mix that in with regular basil, so a 1/2 cup of basil that's chopped, 1 cup of cilantro, also chopped, 4 green onions that I've thinly sliced, and 4 tablespoons of lime juice. I stir that all together, and now I have an amazing soup to share. I served it up in little bowls with a little cilantro and onions on the top, and it was such a flavorful soup. So much depth of flavor and a kick of heat with that curry. It's going on the rotation, and next time I see these ingredients at Aldi, I'm stocking up. Next, I'm making Marry Me Tuscan chicken. I have my chicken thighs, skin on, bone in, and then some additional ingredients. I have my homemade chicken broth, Italian seasoning, olive oil, some roasted red peppers. I have cheese. This is Parmesan, some mozzarella, some cream cheese, heavy whipping cream, and some fresh spinach. I'm going to put my quick cooker on the sear setting and get it heated and then add 1 tablespoon of oil. I'm going to brown my chicken, which I have bone-in, skin-on chicken thighs, and I'm going to get those browned on both sides. I'm going to add 1 tablespoon of Italian seasoning, sprinkle that on top of those, and once the chicken is all browned, I'm going to add 1 cup of chicken broth. Now mine is homemade. I keep it in the freezer, so I'm melting it into the pot with the chicken. I'll scrape up all the bits from the bottom, and then I'm going to cover it with my lid and give it a proper seal, make sure it's sealed, and I'm going to change it from the sear setting now to the pressure setting. I'll select the chicken setting, which is about 25 minutes. Once the timer goes off, I'm going to release the pressure manually, release all that steam, and I'm going to wait for the red button to drop. My chicken is now completely cooked. I'll remove them all, and I'm going to change the setting back to the sear setting as I make my sauce. I'm going to start with 3 ounces of cream cheese. I have half a jar of roasted red peppers. Now this is where, if you want the traditional Marry Me chicken, it would be sun-dried tomatoes. But I didn't have that, and I got to use up what I have, so I went with roasted red peppers. I'll also add 2.5 cups of fresh spinach along with 1/4 a cup of Parmesan cheese and 1/4 cup of heavy whipping cream. I'll add 3 garlic cloves, but actually I'm using my minced garlic from a jar, so about 2 tablespoons. I'll stir that all together, getting the cream cheese melted, and now I'm going to add 1/4 a cup of mozzarella cheese and stir that in. I'm going to add my chicken back in along with all of its juices, and I'm going to warm all of that through and get it back up to a simmer. When everything is bubbling so nicely and everything's creamy, this soup is ready to serve. I love the creaminess of this soup and the flavor, and yes, that sun-dried tomato would have given it that extra flavor, but it turned out delicious. I would also use boneless, skinless chicken thighs next time, but once again, this was so good. My family loved it. Next up is this amazing French onion and mushroom soup, and all of it gets made in my favorite Pampered Chef Rock Crock Dutch oven. First, I'll toast up some sliced French bread with 1 tablespoon of butter melted over medium-high heat. And you could toast this in your oven or your air fryer, but to reduce the number of dishes, I'm just going to toast them in here. And when they are lightly toasted, I'll take them out and set them all aside. Next, I'll slice a pound of cremini mushrooms. Creminis are baby portobello mushrooms. And now I'm going to add 1 tablespoon of butter, and I'm going to add that to my pot, and I'll add my mushrooms. I'll cook those until they're golden brown, about 8 to 9 minutes. I'll remove the mushrooms when done, and now I'm going to prepare my onions. Now I'm using my Pampered Chef mandolin because it is the fastest way to slice a mass amount of onions, and we need a lot for this soup, 5 large in total. This mandolin is so fun, and it's safe and fast. I just love it. Now I'm using both red and white onions. The recipe calls for sweet onions, but I had red, so I'm going to go ahead and use those up. Any onion is going to be delicious in this. I'll cook my onions down until dark brown, stirring occasionally, and after about 20 to 25 minutes, they are now softened and caramelized. I'll now add a teaspoon of minced garlic from the jar, and I'm removing the leaves from some thyme sprigs, and I'll reserve 3 whole sprigs that we'll be adding later. So now I'll add 1 cup of wine. I'm using white, but you can use dry red wine or use any wine, or use beef broth if you don't want to use wine. I'll cook the wine down for about 5 to 7 minutes until no more liquid is visible, and then I'm going to stir in 3 tablespoons of flour and cook it for 1 minute. Next, I'm adding in my 8 cups of beef broth, so 2 full cartons, and I'm going to add my thyme sprigs. I'm also going to add my cooked mushrooms and a little bit of salt, about 1 teaspoon. I'll stir all that in, and I'm going to increase my heat. I'm going to cover it until it comes to a gentle boil, about 8 to 10 minutes. Once my soup came up to a boil, I turned off the heat, and now I'm going to remove those thyme sprigs. I have my broiler preheating, and I'll add my toasted bread slices right over my soup. I'll sprinkle on about 1.5 cups total of cheese, and this is Gruyere, but you could also use Swiss cheese. That would be great as well. I'll put the entire pot under the broiler for just a few minutes, leaving the door cracked, and within 2 to 3 minutes the cheese is melted and golden. I add my thyme leaves and sprinkle those on top. Now I would add the bread right before ready to serve, as the longer it sits, the more it absorbs the liquid from that soup. So I would also consider turning these slices into cubes. That'd be a great option as well, and you can just add them in each soup bowl, especially if you can't put your pot under the broiler and you just want to skip a step. I serve each bread slice into a bowl with the soup and top with a little more thyme leaves, and this soup was so rich and delicious. And while it is a little longer soup to make, it is worth it with the depth of flavor and richness from the caramelized mushrooms and onions. A great soup to feed a crowd, and all done in one pot. I'll leave links in the description box to all the products I mentioned, and I hope you enjoyed these soups and stews. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you on the next video.